Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the channel. So let's take up the important topics from today's newspaper, that is for 12th of June 2023. So we've been tracing how the situation is changing in the state of Manipur. So Kukis, which is the tribal community, it is going to boycott the peace panel over CM's presence. So they feel that things would become unfair or it would definitely lead to political interference. So that's why they have taken this decision to boycott the peace panel. So representatives demand that the center make the situation conducive for talks, even as several members on the panel say their consent was not sought before their names were added to the list. Then cyclone Biparjoy is set to hit the Kutch. Gujarat gears up to handle the situation on ground. So with the extremely severe cyclonic storm, Biparjoy expected to make a landfall on Gujarat's Kutch coast on Thursday. So the state government has started preparations by deploying the teams for both the national and the state disaster response forces in the coastal areas, and it will set up shelters in 6 coastal districts in the Saurashtra and the Kutch regions. So these are few steps which state is taking. And apart from that, we have also discussed the topic that how cyclones they are named. So particulate pollution is increasing in Rajasthan cities as per a CSE report. So it faces multi-pollutant crisis with the levels of several gaseous pollutants like nitrogen dioxide, oxygen beginning to rise in the state. So this is the keyword multi-pollutant crisis, and this has increased the public health risk, and that is as per the analysis by the Center for Science and Environment. So air quality is worsening in both the big and the small cities and towns, despite the clean air action being taken in the state. So continuing the elevated pollution levels among the city stations highlight the systemic pollution. So again, this is a keyword which persists in the region because of inadequate infrastructure for pollution control across all the sectors. So that is one area where more needs to be done. Apart from that, non-attainment cities, they are those which have fallen short of the national ambient air quality standards for 5 years. So this is one fact. So the analysis has assessed the long-term trends and as well as the seasonal variations in particulate and the gaseous pollution in the state. So nitrogen dioxide pollution, which is closely linked with the traffic flow, is on the rise in Jaipur, Jodhpur, and Udaipur, as its level was 24% to 51% higher than it was recorded in 2019. So one again important thing that we get to know here is that nitrogen dioxide pollution is related to traffic flows. So sambar deer, you need to find out where all in India do we get sambar deers. So this is a picture from the Mudumulai Tiger Reserve, and a good rainfall in the past 3 weeks in the reserve has garnished the surroundings with greenery. Then you can also find out about its IUCN status. Coming to the editorial page, so here again talking about Manipur, a rude reminder of Northeast tensions. So again, this topic is important from internal security GS3. So there is still a divide. So most people across the country, they had reason to believe that the Northeast had over time become well and truly integrated. Also that there was now more commonalities rather than differences amongst the various tribes and communities. So ethnic violence in Manipur consequently has come as a rude reminder. So notwithstanding improved communications, better transit facilities, and support for the special needs of the region, there does still exist a divide between the tribes and plains people within the region. So an additional dimension in the Northeast is the presence of ethnic subnationalism and identity politics in an aggravated form. So all the keywords have been used in the sentence. So ethnic allegiance has oftentimes been in conflicting with the mainstream nationalism or vice versa previously, but it was hoped that such tensions they had subsided. But the Manipur developments, they imply that in much of the Northeast, ethnic identities, they still overshadow and overwhelm all other considerations. So a solution in quick time to the Manipur imbroglio is important, or else it could ignite similar conflicts elsewhere in the region or even in different states as well. Apart from this, we know about all the background related to the ethnic violence witnessed in Manipur. So we're not going into that area. So weighing in on the solutions, definitely solution is a very important aspect right now to handle the situation. So the Home Minister, his recent visit to Manipur promised much, but it is highly uncertain whether the solutions that he has proposed, which is the standard prescription in all such situations, whether they are right ones at this time or not. So he announced for a judicial probe into the ethnic violence and formation of a 3-member committee that would be headed by a judge. That has been well received. And there is another proposal by him for the creation of a unified command to oversee security in the state. And then announcement of a CBI inquiry into specific incidents of violence is a welcome measure. So these are some of the steps as a part of solution. So what is needed at this time is for the senior voices to play a leading role. So notwithstanding the fact that Northeast has been spared serious violence for some years now, the reality is that it is still a volatile region. So it is in the process of changing and adapting to the newer circumstances. So what the center needs to achieve is an optimal positioning, even if it may seem like giving far too more concessions. So it's important to understand the cultural factors which are critical, especially in times of conflict. And the Metis versus the tribal divide is both a cultural and the sociological phenomenon. So a solution, it would demand a combination of the adjusting to realities coupled with an understanding of the moral imperatives of the numerous tribal communities that dot the northeastern landscape. So you can note down the keywords. There are like a lot of keywords have been used in this editorial. So from the perspective of nutritional security, so here we're just talking about the adolescent girl nutrition. Apart from this, the basic things includes the data regarding stunting and wasting, all of that. And then different schemes that have already been undertaken by the government in order to ensure the nutritional security, like we talk about food fortification and then making it a component of the midday meal schemes. And then there are different schemes for the pregnant women also, for lactating mothers. So ever-growing nutritional concern in India. So adolescent girls, they are particularly vulnerable to undernutrition and anemia due to the onset of menstruation. So findings of the National Family Health Survey for the period 2019-21 confirm these concerns as a staggering 59% of the adolescent girls they were found to be anemic. So there was a question on anemia this year in prelims as well. So all these areas, they're definitely important for us to know the basic things about them. And when we have a look at the data for NHFS 4, the numbers they have been reported at 41.9%, the school-going girls as underweight, and the numbers showcase a worrying trend. So there are complex number of factors from environmental conditions to the cultural norms that lack a gender neutral environment within a household, which affects the nutrition uptake in the adolescent girls. So this statement is very important for us. Apart from that, progress has been made in improving the crucial health indicators in the form of various government initiatives that have successfully achieved the optimum coverage also. But it is, however, essential to acknowledge that current health interventions, they do not specifically focus on the nutritional statuses of adolescent girls. So poorly balanced and insufficient diets, they can lead to cognitive impairment that affects one's academic performance as well. And this can result in lower educational attainment, which can limit the opportunities for employment and then economic self-sufficiency later in life. So that's how things are interconnected. And then also it would turn into financial instability and increased poverty. So it's important to redefine all the current going interventions. Here are the examples as well. The scheme for adolescent girls. Then we have Poshan 2.0. Then we have the Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karyakram. So we need to work more upon raising the awareness level as well, different schemes that are being run and the potential benefits that can be derived by the beneficiaries. We need to use data and evidence in order to work more upon the future schemes and policies. So a holistic narrative on the adolescent girls' nutrition, explaining its linkages with overall mental and physical well-being, individual productivity, and the overall economic growth of the country is needed. So the economy is better poised, but still needs deft steering and mindful reforms. So India's economy is firmly out of the throes of the pandemic blues, and the higher than expected 7.2% GDP growth last year could actually be an underestimate as well. And the country is now poised for a decade, if not more, of uninterrupted 6.5 to 7% growth, even if no further reforms are undertaken. So this was what our Chief Economic Advisor had to say, V. Anant Nageshwaram. So apart from that, India asserted, he asserted that could now grow for a longer period of 7 to 15 years as China did between 1979 and 2008 without running into overheating problems as it did after 3 to 4 years of strong growth in the recent decades. So some reasons for his optimism includes there is strong economic momentum, there is better macro fundamentals, like we are seeing that inflation is cooling down, it is moderating, trade deficit is also easing, and cleaner banks like NPAs, they are also falling, they are also under control. Then corporate balance sheets and bolstered by the reforms like GST, IBC, and then digitization is definitely one of the strengths. So that is spurring more of formalization. So these are some of the stronger or the positive points. Apart from that, sectors like steel and cement, they are seeing higher capacities in actions, and sections of the industry may well start loosening the purse strings soon, but a broad-based revival may take longer and it needs more actions to buttress the confidence building. So we are also seeing that consumer confidence, that too is also rising. So misadventures like high import tariffs and the complex angel tax on inbound investments apart, even failing to fix an online service to register a new company does not engender the investor confidence. So before the economic engine can be truly on autopilot mode, the government must desist from unnecessary tinkering with its calibrations and create conducive conditions for a smooth and swift, hurdle-free passage for value and job creators. So yesterday we talked about hydrogen from seawater. And apart from that, Amazon's rescue. So again, we are seeing the issue regarding the governors holding back the bills that have been passed by the state assemblies for indefinite time period. So here we need to have clarity about what does the constitution has to say, and then different and important Supreme Court judgments regarding this thing. So governor's role, legislature of a state, it comprises of the governor, the legislative assembly, and legislative council if it exists. So governor has little autonomy in his functioning. So it is a settled legal position that he can act only on the advice of his council of ministers. So do pay attention to the word only. And the intention of the framers of the constitution was for the president or governor to act only on the advice of the council of ministers. Actual governance of the country or state is by the prime minister or the chief minister, as the case may be. So we know that they are nominal heads, both when we talk about either the president or the governor of a state. So there is a caveat as well. So there are certain instances where a governor can exercise his discretion independent of the council of ministers as well. So we need to know about what all are the discretionary powers of a governor. So whether a governor has discretion or not in a particular matter is significant, since as per Article 163, Clause 2 of the Constitution, this decision of his cannot be challenged. So in this judgment, Shamsher Singh versus State of Punjab, 1974, Supreme Court held that president or a governor can exercise their discretion independent of their ministers only when the Constitution expressly permits them to do so. So we have Article 200, which states that when the governor is presented with a bill, he can either give the assent to the bill or withhold it, or you can return the bill with certain suggestions. So the first provision of the article states that after a bill it is presented to the governor may or as soon as possible return the bill if it is not a money bill with a message to reconsider the bill as a whole or any part thereof. So the governor can also return the bill for reconsideration if it is not a money bill. So it means money bill cannot be returned back by the governor for reconsideration. Moving on, the House has 6 months to decide whether or not to accept the request or the suggestions that have been suggested by the governor. So the time is 6 months. So once the House it returns the bill back to the governor, now he has no choice but to give his assent whether or not his recommendations they have been accepted. So when the second time the same bill is presented to the governor, then there is no option, then he or she have to give the assent. The second provision of Article 200, it gives governor the discretion to refer the bill to the president. So here he has the discretionary power if he is of the opinion that the bill, if passed, would take away the powers of the High Court. So under this situation, the governor has the discretionary power of referring the bill further to the President of India. So procedure to be followed when the presidential assent for such a bill is required is set out in Article 201 of the Constitution. So discretion of the governor does not contemplate an indefinite withholding of assent to a bill. So nowhere in the Constitution this discretionary power has been mentioned that governor has the power to indefinitely withhold the assent to the bill. So such an action would cause a breakdown of the constitutional machinery. So to what extent the governor's autonomy is recognized under the Constitution can be seen from a few judgments of the Supreme Court as well. So for greater clarity here, we are again referring to another Supreme Court judgment where it decided that whether a bill pending the governor's assent, it would lapse upon the dissolution of the House or not. And the court considered the provisions of Article 200 and 201 in this case. So it held that since there is no time limit that has been prescribed under Article 200 and 201 for the governor or the president to give their assent, unlike the House, which has 6 months to decide the recommendations of the governor or the president, as the case may be, it suggested that the framers of the Constitution did not want a bill pending assent from the governor to be at the risk of lapsing on dissolution of the House. So basically, it indirectly means firstly, we need to have clarity that there is no time limit that has been mentioned in the Constitution that under this time limit, either the governor or the president, they have to give an assent to the bill. So it means that even upon the dissolution of the House, the bill, if it is pending assent of the governor or the president, it will not lapse. So though the Constitution it prescribes that there is no express time limit, the first provision does mention कि governor ought to either give the assent या आप bill को वापस send कर दोगे to the House as soon as possible. So कोई exact time limit mention नहीं है. But when the bill is sent for reconsideration back to the state assembly by the governor, under that case, the time limit is 6 months. So within 6 months, the state assembly again needs to send back that bill to the governor. But Constitution is not saying nowhere it is mentioning that governor has the option to indefinitely withhold the assent. It is saying either you send back the bill to the state assembly or you give your assent or you send it to the president. So in the Shamsher Singh judgment, the court held, though not explicitly, that it is only with respect to the second proviso that the governor exercises the discretion independent of the council. So here the discretionary power again is whether here the governor it can refer the bill to the president. So that is the discretionary power in the hands of the governor, which is mentioned in the Constitution. So court has also highlighted the exceptional circumstances of the governor acting independent of the Council of Ministers. So that is an exceptional circumstance. And it held that the Smith's statement on the royal assent would hold good even in the context of Indian democracy for both presidents and governors. So that is refusal of the royal assent on the ground that the monarch strongly disapproved of a bill or that was intensely controversial would nevertheless be unconstitutional. So then we have another important judgment, the Nabam Rabia and the Barming Felix versus the Deputy Speaker. The court, even in this case, also held that insofar as Article 200 is concerned, the governor exercises discretion only with regard to whether a bill ought to be reserved for consideration of president or not. So this is important because the court has also held that when we talk about Article 163 Clause 2, it has to be understood in context of Article 163 Clause 1, meaning that only those matters where the Constitution expressly permits the governor to act autonomously cannot be challenged before a court of a law. So I would read it again. So it is basically saying that Article 163 Clause 2 needs to be understood in the context or it needs to be linked with Article 163 Clause 1, meaning only those matters where the Constitution it expressly permits the governor to act autonomously that cannot be challenged before a court of law. So here the Constitution is only permitting in case of referring the bill further to the President of India. So that cannot be challenged before a court of law. And then the judgment we had in the Nabam Rabia, it has also been referred to a larger bench of the court with regard to the issue of whether a speaker is barred from proceeding with deciding matters under Schedule 10 while a motion for his removal is pending before the House. So governor therefore has no discretion to indefinitely withhold assent to a bill. So if a bill is presented to him or her, it has to be returned with recommendations or given assent as soon as possible. So if it takes away the power of the High Court, so the governor has the discretion to refer it for president's consideration. So refusing to act on a bill is in the violation of the Constitution, and governor's action or inaction in this regard would be susceptible to judicial review. So this is a very beautiful article. I hope things are now completely clear as far as withholding the bill indefinitely by the governor is concerned. Significance of the Thailand elections. This is not so important for us, but we just need to know about general thing why it is so important. So Thailand's Progressive Move Forward Party and the populist Pheu Thai Party, they claimed victory in an election that gave a thumbs down to the military-backed parties which ruled on and off for a decade. So the alliance on 22nd of May signed an ambitious deal aiming to draft a new constitution and mandatory military conscription and monopolies and allow the same-sex marriage, among other things. So winner of the vote is not assured the right to form the new government. A joint session of 500-seat House of Representatives and 250-member Senate will be held in July. And the fact that Thai people, they came out in record numbers at 75% voter turnout to vote for a younger party promising the historic reforms, rejecting the influential military-backed parties is being considered as a tectonic shift in the country's politics. So this is one general thing that we need to know about. So Indian Air Force and Army, they carry out the joint exercise in the central sector with the deployment of multiple combat assets to check the operational readiness of the two forces. So this is the picture from the Nishit Garden on the banks of the Dal Lake from Srinagar. So India is leading the world in every field, says the speaker Om Birla. So he presented the Lions Club International's Road to Restore the SDG Awards. So the awards were presented to 20 individuals and organizations at the Lions International's fourth roundtable discussions. So SDG awards they were given. So you need to know about firstly how many goals are there and what is India's performance in different goals. So India is leading the world in every field. The coming time belongs to India in economic, social, political, or democratic fields. And there is discussion on India's SDGs everywhere. So we had a long discussion on the platform of the parliament to achieve the goals of SDGs. So the way the Lions Club worked for the prevention of blindness, its effect is visible on the whole country. So Lions Club worked in remote villages to overcome the problem with cataract. So Prime Minister, he inaugurated the first national training conclave in New Delhi on Sunday and highlighted the importance of capacity building, ending silos and enhancing service delivery. So he addressed more than 1,500 participants drawn from training and research institutes across the country. So he said that he had been a proponent of improving the governance process and policy implementation in the country through capacity building of the civil service. So, as a part of this, the National Program for Civil Services Capacity Building was launched to prepare a future ready civil service with the right attitude, skills, and knowledge. So Mount Mayon volcano is there in Philippines. That is important thing for us. Apart from that, person you need to locate it. It's definitely in Ukraine. So 7 children among 35 people they are missing following the Ukraine flood. Coming to mid newspapers, so here government focus on ethanol and sugar sector approvals. So the Food and Public Distribution Department is planning to bring all the approvals and clearances for putting up the sugar and ethanol projects under the National Single Window System that has been developed by Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So it is a one-stop digital platform for the investors for approvals and clearances. So basically a step towards making the doing of business much more easier. Apart from that, we don't have something important from the newspaper today. Coming to Financial Express. So Department of Telecommunication approaches customs for help on illegal imports because obviously then that compromises with the security as well. So some telecom companies they found bypassing rules by tweaking the product codes. So products from China with malware can enter the country. That is one threat. Loss in the government revenue since importers they switch codes to products with zero duty, and firms making under PLI schemes they have to compete with the cheaper imports. So that is another competition. So may audit firms that make in India. So definitely auditing is required. So first, the products from China with malware, they can enter the country. So we've already seen that the risk is twofold. Apart from that, so Bargad biorefinery is making steady progress and it is expected to be commissioned soon. So Bargad 2G biorefinery, it will invigorate a circular economy, give impetus to waste to wealth creation, boost farmers' income, and create large scale employment. So UAE emerges as the fourth largest investor in India last fiscal. So areas of interest included services, sea transport, power, construction activities, and also a comprehensive economic partnership agreement have been signed in 2022. And under this pact, a number of goods from both the countries, they are getting zero duty access to each other's markets. So we have this whole article of Russia Day. So Russia and India celebrate 30 years of signing the Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation. So both the nations they forge strong scientific and technological cooperation, elevating advancements in space, science, and technology. So we signed this Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation in 1993, and so currently, India's role is as an important international partner for Russia will further increase. Much has been done to strengthen our partnership, but more needs to be done to meet the demands of global change. Then we obviously talk about the BrahMos missile when we talk about India and Russia. So it's a universal missile power of India, Russia cooperation. BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. There was again a question this year on this. So you need to know about what actually is a supersonic cruise missile. So even here we have a detailed article regarding BrahMos, which is India's Brahmastra in 21st century. So it has incredible versatility to be deployed across land, ships, submarines, and air platforms. Taking up the Indian Express newspaper, so we've talked about the cyclone which is approaching towards Kutch region. Then engineers taking up the non-core jobs is a waste of resources. So as we say, skilled manpower and the jobs, they also need to, meet those skills of the manpower is very important. So that is one area when we talk about unemployment. So the director of the country stopped ranking Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. He said more and more engineers, they're opting for the non-engineering career choices is a waste of resources. And he's also like behind a cybersecurity expert, and he's the man behind India's first indigenous computer microprocessor, which is Shakti. And said that I'm deeply concerned about the current situation with India's increasing number of infrastructure and aviation projects. I worry about the availability of civil and aerospace engineers. So we have seen that MSP has been hiked. So increase in MSPs makes economic sense, and it sends the right signals to the farmers when domestic supplies of the agro commodities are finely balanced. So we need to know about for which all commodities and cereals MSP is provided, and for which ones it is not provided, that is rather much more important. Apart from that, how it is decided, what is the formula that is used to calculate MSP, that is important for us. So alarm bells rung by Lancet study on the lifestyle disorders must not be ignored. So healthcare sector must step up awareness. So yesterday also we took a very, very important topic in the Financial Express newspaper regarding the lifestyle disorders and regarding our eating habits. So we're seeing the spread of the non-communicable diseases like diabetes that was also earlier associated with the older age groups, but unhealthy diets, inadequate physical activity, exposure to tobacco smoke, and alcohol abuse mean that raised blood pressure, increased blood glucose, and obesity have begun to show up among the relatively young population also. Rest all the things we have already taken up, so that's why I'm just skipping them here in this newspaper. Coming to the explained page, so potential ecological impact of the Ukraine's this dam's collapse. So it is the Kharkovka Dam collapse. What is the ecological impact of this? So floods and destruction we are seeing all around. You can see in this picture the view from person. So here it would be impacting agriculture. That would obviously impact then the food security situation. So it has like led to flooding in approximately 10,000 hectares of agricultural land on the right bank in the Kherson region. So the Dnipro Dam, it's located in the Dnipro River. Then the collapse of the dam, it has left 94% the irrigation systems in the Kherson, 74% in Zaporizhia, and 30% in this regions without a source of water. So the regions, the agricultural lands, they may turn into deserts by early next year. So that is another threat. And flooding is likely to make the arable land unfit for agriculture for years. Then it would be definitely impacting on energy also. So Ukraine, it relies on its 4 nuclear power plants. You need to know about all 4 of them. And it is considered to be a clean energy source for over half of its energy needs. So largest nuclear power plant, which is the largest of Europe, is Zaporizhia, which is occupied by the Russian forces right now. And apart from that, the International Atomic Energy Agency had stated that the nuclear plant wasn't under immediate threat as there are alternative water sources such as cooling pond, and Ukraine's nuclear energy said the reactor was shut down as a safety precaution. So we're talking about India's green revolution. The US paved the way for it, and even as the Soviet Union drove its industrialization in 1950s and 60s. So Prime Minister Modi heads to US, and here we are having a look at the agro cooperation between the two nations. So whether we talk about the first university in 1950, Major H.S. Sandhu, who led the reclamation of the UP's Tarai region and the state's chief secretary, they visited US and saw the so-called land grant universities there. So these institutions, they were set up on the public land. They engaged in agricultural education as well as research and extension activity. So this was unlike the agricultural and the veterinary colleges in India that merely taught and produced graduates. So research and extension, where we talk about training the farmers and adopting different technologies, was largely left to the state agricultural departments. So talking about the green revolution seeds, so the traditional wheat and the rice varieties, they were tall and slender, and they grew vertically on application of fertilizers and water, while lodging when their ear heads, they were like heavy with well-filled grains. So green revolution entailed breeding semi-dwarf varieties with strong stems that didn't lodge. Then how the seeds they came to India. So around 1957, MS Swaminathan, then he was 33-year-old scientist at the IARI in New Delhi, saw a paper on Northern 10 genes by the Vogel in the American Agronomy. He wrote to Vogel for the seeds of Gaines, and Vogel responded but noted that Gaines, being a winter wheat, wouldn't flower in the Indian conditions. So he directed him to Borlo, and whose spring wheats containing the dwarfing genes were better suited for the country. So Swaminathan, he got in touch with Norman Borlaug, who came to India only in March 1963, following the request placed to the Rockefeller Foundation. And then he sent the seeds of 4 Mexican wheat varieties bred by him, which were first sown in the trial fields. Again, a picture from Ukraine's Kherson region. So you're seeing that streets and trade port, they are seen underwater and polluted by oil. So you can imagine what would be the ground reality in that area. Then Black Sea has also been mentioned. So definitely geographically, from the perspective of map work, this is a very, very important topic and area. So RBI allows the compromise settlement with the willful defaulters and the fraud accounts. So banks can take on compromise settlements on accounts that have been categorized as willful defaulters or fraud without prejudice to the criminal proceeding underway against such debtors. That's there then. We've talked about UAE as the fourth largest investor in India in the previous financial year. So OPEC plus working against uncertainties and sentiment, says the Saudi minister. So the Saudi Arabia's energy minister said on Sunday that latest OPEC plus agreement involved comprehensive reform, but that the alliance was also working against the uncertainties and sentiment within the market. So that is why we had this agreement. And he said while the physical market was giving some signals, the futures market was saying the opposite, meaning the OPEC plus alliance of producers had to remain in a state of readiness. So Saudi Arabia, it is OPEC's largest exporter. It has announced a voluntary cut of 1 million barrels per day. So definitely that decision is much more important. So obviously that would be having a negative impact as far as the crude oil inflation is concerned, and then domestically, obviously, it would be having further repercussions. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in today's analysis video. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and also hit the like button for this video. Thank you so much.